So how do you get your loved one out of the car when they've been driving for 50, 60 years maybe? I think I'm doing the math correctly. Maybe only 40 years. I'm trying to think how long it's been. I got my driver's license in 1983, so that makes it 42 years. Anyway, just do the math. It's not super easy to convince somebody they need to stop driving, coupled with the fact that our infrastructures, our cities, our towns, etc., most of them are not designed for walking and getting your errands done. Running to the grocery store, taking the dog to be groomed, getting to the pharmacy. 99% of the time, that's going to require being in the car, speaking of the dog. So you've probably heard a lot of advice about how to get your loved one out of the car. But I'm going to give you like the most comprehensive list possible. So the first thing is, first, have a conversation with them. Ask them how they feel about driving. Are they comfortable? Do they feel confident behind the wheel? Because if they're feeling super duper confident and they're driving to the right of the lane or really slowly, or they're not managing to park between the lines in the parking lot correctly, this is going to be a tougher conversation than you want. So if they're not confident, then that's a good time to talk to them and say, let's discuss ways you can remain independent without driving as much. Maybe you stop driving at night. Maybe you stop driving longer distances. Maybe you just kind of keep it to the immediate area that you're really familiar with and feel like you can navigate well. A lot of people with dementia actually do pretty well within a mile or two of their house. I don't really recommend people continue to allow that because most really serious accidents happen fairly close to home, so keep that in mind. But it might take some baby steps. So the second thing is, if they're very adamant they're driving fine and they think you're the one that's crazy because you have an issue with their driving, you're going to have to pull out the stops. Now, let me suggest some things that don't always work or maybe aren't the best. A lot of people say report them anonymously to the DMV. I would suggest trying that, but you never know who's on the other end at the DMV. If you get an older worker who isn't really keen on taking driver's licenses away from people, you might have struggles. Now, I understand that there's some new rules. It's probably different from state to state. But it sounds to me like they've actually made it easier for older adults, like in their 70s, to keep their driver's licenses. So those of us that love them, caring for them, live next door to them maybe, we're going to have to be more vigilant. So yes, call the DMV. You can report them anonymously. The next thing a lot of people say is have the doctor do it. Well, some doctors are going to be like, you've been diagnosed with dementia, or we have concerns you have dementia. Your license is gone. The problem with that is they need to have a trusted relationship with this doctor. And if the doctor yanks their driver's license away, that might completely obliterate the trusted relationship. Again, many doctors are not really willing to take on that task. And I have two feelings about that. I could go either way, but, we have to play the hand that we're dealt. So you've called the DMV, the doctor's not really interested in helping. What next? Have a conversation. I'm always talking about having conversations with our older loved ones about various things that are related to aging, where they want to live, how they want to be cared for. Dig through my videos, you'll find all kinds of conversations. That's what I do. Have a conversation with them, tell them you're a bit concerned, you've noticed dings, scratches, and things on the car. They came home really stressed. Maybe they've gotten lost a little bit. Whatever trigger you've got, let them know in a very calm, patient, understanding tone of voice that you're concerned. And this is the story that really changed how I feel about how to talk to people. I had I think he was a geriatrician on my podcast, and he treated patients in New York City, like Manhattan or something, like pretty small area. Haven't really been there, so can't attest to, how well the doctor bumping into somebody would be. Anyway, he ran into a patient he hadn't seen for quite a while, and the reason he hadn't seen this guy is because he abruptly left town, because what the doctor had gathered from this conversation was the man jumped the curb and ran over somebody, and they had to do a craniotomy, which is where they take a piece of your brain out to keep the swelling from damaging your brain. That's scary. Hopefully nobody else has to deal with something like that. But here's how he was teaching people to get your loved one out of the car. If they are financially motivated, concerned about money, they're always, very organized, that kind of person, you might want to talk to them about, I'm a little bit concerned, and if you are in an accident, even if it's not your fault, if they know you're older and they suspect something's going on with you, they could sue and we could lose everything. I mean, you don't have to really tie it into they have a problem. You might want to tie it into, look, the world is kind of, and somebody might sue us and we might lose everything. That's a really good one. The next thing to do is also talk to the pharmacist. They don't have to have as trusted a relationship with the pharmacist. So the pharmacist might be able to tell them, hey, this medication that you're on, it's not really a good idea to be driving right now, and that might help ease them out of the car. And then there's always the little tips and tricks. You can refuse to ride with them, but that kind of causes more fights than any solutions. You can hide their keys, you can take the distributor cap off, you can take the battery cables off, if you know about those things. I have a hybrid, so the inside of my car looks very different than cars of my past. Not sure I'd want to mess with it. You can have somebody move it to another location. These are all choices. My suggestion would be have the conversation, express your concerns that somebody else may do something horrific, sue them, take you for everything you've got, and see if that doesn't help. But the key here is make sure you start putting into place ways that they can remain independent, because losing your car keys means you got to rely on everybody else. And if somebody else is busy or they just don't want to, you're kind of stuck, and that stinks. And we really don't want to live that way, so we don't want to expect our loved ones or our neighbors or friends to live that way. So I hope these little tips and tricks help. If you ever have any questions, just leave me a comment. I'm really good at responding to comments. I can dig through the advice from this doctor and share it with you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this.